Hello there. Good to see you. Um, Reached another weekend, well, almost. Hope you have a good Friday. Um, One of the things that when you get to do something like this, I thought for the day, every day, um, I have found an incredible pressure to keep it upbeat, cheery, and you know, folks have got enough on their plate with a pandemic. They really don't want anything else that's a bit kind of down and a bit serious. The difficulty is life keeps on getting in the way, and especially now when things are kind of beginning gradually to get back into some, if not normalcy. There things are happening, as in there's other subjects coming into the political debate, and so now we've got difficulties with Brexit and the government's breaking the law, and we've got other things that are beginning to happen. And this happened, and I just felt as if I couldn't. This isn't probably the first thing you'd want to talk about in the middle of a ongoing pandemic, but it's kind of it is what it is. Therefore, you have to try and deal with it. Just at the tail end of August, a Conservative MP called Andrew Mitchell, quite a I mean, I think he is a backbencher, but he's held various kind of committee chairs, and he's quite a charismatic, small c, not theologically, but he's quite an animated and good communicator, and he's kind of a voice that people listen to. And he made a prediction, and you don't get many politicians who make predictions. They're too busy dealing with the reality as it is. He said that assisted dying would become legal in the Westminster Parliament, i.e., for England, in the next 4 years. I find that scary. Now, it's a not delegated, it's a devolved power. Therefore, it would have to go through the Scottish Parliament. But if it happens in Westminster, there's a big, big increase in pressure. 5 years ago, the MPs in Westminster voted on an assisted dying bill that aimed to change the law in England and Wales. And basically, what it meant was with 6 months or less left to live, it would give the person who was petitioning the doctors the right to be killed by a doctor. They had a debate. The bill was rejected by 330 votes to 118, which was the kind of numbers where, in any normal situation, that subject would not come back to Parliament for a very long time. The difficulty is, ever since that vote in 2015, there are an awful lot of people who are committed to this passionately, that they want euthanasia. Therefore, the campaign has been slowly growing to have another debate, another bill would come forward. And so this campaign is usually led by an organisation called Dignity and Dying. For those of you of a different era, this is basically what used to be called the Voluntary Euthanasia Society, but now it's all about dignity. Excuse my cynicism. And so what they have been trying to build pressure, primarily through tough cases of people who are dying going to court and saying, please kill me, please change the law. And case after case after case, judges have said, this is not my job, the law's the law. And so Dignity and Dying have kind of reverted back to a focus on the Parliament. Scotland's been the same, but again, they had a vote against it, and it never seems to be a definitive fight, in the sense the people who want euthanasia just keep their powder dry and come back another time. So it's the fact that Andrew Mitchell said what he said. He thinks it's going to be law within the next 4 years. the thing that's changed is that there have been two general elections since 2015. It's been a busy old time for the House of Commons. And as a consequence, um, the makeup of the actual parliament has substantially changed. So the MPs and what they think about euthanasia is not necessarily a given, certainly not the way it was in 2015, where there was a lot of research and people were sort of investigating. So despite the passion and the kind of determination of the pro-euthanasia group, they really didn't have a chance because it was a powerful debate. Apparently, people went there ready to vote in favour of the bill, and because of the debate, changed their mind. The thing is, that's individual MPs in 2015, and now they're not quite so sure because it's not a campaign manifesto type of issue. People don't say, I'm going to have this opinion on euthanasia. So the euthanasia lobby think they've got a greater chance. Certainly, according to Andrew Mitchell, he thinks it's going to be law in the next 4 years. So all of that preamble is basically saying, as Christians, I recognise there are people who share faith that I have, and who come to different points of view. I really don't want to condemn people because I realise it's very rare. But if you come to an impassioned kind of commitment to euthanasia, it's usually because you have watched a mother or a father slowly wither away with some body wasting disease, and it's just, there are lots of diseases nowadays that were good enough not to cure but to manage, and so people take an eon to die, and it's just horrific for the family. If you're one of those people and as a consequence support euthanasia, it's a really hard thing to say, well, your experience is wrong. The difficulty is, I think Christians are supposed to take a different viewpoint. One of the things that there's a woman in one of the programs called, I think it's called Waking the Dead. Is that the one with Shoestring? I can't remember. There's one, it's one of those forensic, kind of cold case TV programs. And she is a disabled person, as in she's in a wheelchair, but she's one of the kind of scientific types who's in the kind of laboratory while they're out sort of finding bones somewhere. And she did a show in, I didn't go to see it, but she did a show in Edinburgh a few years ago called Euthanasia, the Musical, which just as a title I was drawn to because I thought it was really funny. You don't get many musicals, and certainly not many ones that are funny about the subject of euthanasia. And so one of the things that was very clear, because she is disabled, it's not just an issue for Christians. It's not just an issue for do-gooders who are in church on Sunday. It's also a very live issue if you are disabled, because what it says is some lives are just not worthy of being lived because they are so, lives are so stricken by some disease, it makes them not worth living. And once the law is there to permit that, it becomes something that's not permitted. It ends up becoming something that's expected. And that is hotly disputed. But it's one of the things that I recognise when you kind of delve into the various groups in this situation who debate it. It's not just Christians. There's a lot of people who are against euthanasia. And you would be surprised given the fact that they're very disabled. And, it's like, well, why would you be that way? And the answer is they see themselves as fully and completely part of society, and they're not diminished because they can't walk or can't do whatever it is their disability doesn't allow them to do. More importantly, I think Christians are supposed to have a better story to tell. Christians would say that you are, because the Latin would be imago Dei, you have the image of God within you. You're not there just as a unit of productivity. Your worth is not in what you achieve or what you can do or the stuff that you're able to say is yours. By simply being alive, you have worth. By being you, disabilities and all, you have worth. And let's face it, when you get to recognize people in that way, you recognize everybody is disabled. It's just some disabilities you can see and some disabilities you can't. If certain lives are deemed to be not worthy of being lived, then maybe we need to remember that a person's worth isn't in who they are and what they can do. In the state of Oregon in the United States, one of the states which is most commonly held up by people supporting euthanasia because it has legislation allowing assisted suicide. The research that they do has specifically said that the main reason motivating people to want euthanasia is that they don't want to be a burden on people. How old are you? Are you still independent? Or are you a burden? Is it really time for you to do the right thing and stop being a burden? Murder police. There's already enough people who look upon themselves as a burden to their family or indeed to society without the thing actually being legislated and actually giving them the kind of legislative infrastructure to say, see, look, this law says I really actually should be thinking about this because I shouldn't be a burden. I often give my mother a row because she finds it very hard to receive help or generosity without paying it back. She can't just accept something as grace. She has to note it down, and so at your next birthday, you'll get something in lieu of what you've given her. Sometimes you just have to receive because you might see yourself as a burden, but other people just see you as a blessing. I'll quote my mother one last time. She went to visit somebody in, I think it was the Guild, and she was in the process of dying. And my mother didn't really know what to say, and ended up saying very little. And as she was going out from the hospital ward, my mum said to the nurse, I don't know what I did there. I don't know if I did anything at all. The nurse said, are you different because you came here? My mother said, I felt sorry for her. I felt compassion for her. And the nurse said, well, maybe this woman in the bed has helped you become closer to what you're supposed to be. I can't, with some little mellifluous sentence, just stick some words together and make everybody's pain turn into a sermon illustration so that all the pain and difficulty is just not that bad. Sometimes it's just horrific. And there are certainly diseases that I look at and I recognize people have in their life, and I think euthanasia is really, really hard to argue against. But again and again and again, I see a God who asks me to see in people not what they're worth, but who made them. I don't know who you could talk to. I don't know who you need to speak to. But I know if in the next 4 years, and I think it will be, there's another attempt to make assisted suicide into something that's legally, taken through Parliament, we need to be ready to fight it. We need to be ready to talk about it. We need to actually discuss it with pals. We need to respectfully disagree. Above all else, we need to take Jesus seriously when he says, I've come that you might have life and have it in all its fullness. And when we're told that level of fullness is no longer significant enough to actually warrant life, when we're told by doctors that we must, at all costs, stick with the central, fundamental part of the Hippocratic Oath first, do no harm, then that is something that's worth fighting for. Certainly something that's worth praying for. Until then, go with God, because I know God goes with you. Bye.